Neil, it's one of the fastest growing sports in the region, pickleball. Have you played it before?
I haven't played pickleball before, but then I've read a lot about it, considering the fact that it's growing globally so fast. I wanted to first... Okay, so I'll take 2 steps back. I played tennis. And then when paddle came about, I was like, hey, what is this? I tried to learn it. I tried to understand this. And now when pickleball is coming up, I was like, wait, let me try and understand this. Understood one big difference. There is no glass wall. No taking off the walls and trying to keep the rally on. And plus the courts are smaller. This is my basic understanding of pickleball. Apart from all the fantastic things that are happening around the world, I just hope and wait for the first pickleball court to open up here close to my house.
Well, in its 2023 Topline Participation Report, the Sports and Fitness Industry Association named pickleball the fastest growing sport in America, not for the first time, but for the 3rd year in a row. And joining us in the studio is the CEO and the co-founder of the Pickleball World Rankings, the PVR World Series, and the PBR World Tour. He's the founder of Pickleball United, which is the official flooring partner for the MLP and APP Tours. Pranav Kohli, you're a busy man. Thank you so much for joining us here in the studios.
No, thanks for having us, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You are all in on pickleball. What is it about pickleball that attracted you to becoming associated with it?
Yeah, look, I'm 168 kgs. I know you guys can't see me, but this is the only sport where I could actually get on the court and play competitively. I can have somebody who's 24 years old, top rank, playing as a doubles partners with me, and then somebody on the opposite side who's also similarly ranked, but then somebody who's of my skill set, and all 4 of us could actually have a great time. And this is also, I could play with my wife, I could play with my dad. It's one of those sports where you could actually have a great time playing with anybody.
So would you say that the rise of pickleball and at this space is primarily because of a low entry barrier from skill sets perspective and it being a more social sport as compared to some of the other sports that one plays?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the growth that we're experiencing is primarily because of that. And I think that's why it's become a participative sport. What's also happening on the other side is that at the top level, it's getting very competitive. And there is athletic prowess there.
Sure.
So it's not like you can become a top pro.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, at the beginning, at the entry level, there is definitely low barrier to entry. There is also, easy learning curve. With tennis, for example, to learn a serve, you could learn it or you could not learn it in your lifetime, right? With pickleball, you could be on a court.
And that's an interesting point because everyone loves having a bit of a rally, but the serve is often the part of the game that holds people back from really enjoying it socially.
Correct. And this is where pickleball, you have to serve, below your waist, and it takes away that advantage from a serve perspective, basically.
So we're looking at pickleball, which, as we mentioned at the start, massively growing in the United States. And you've come up this introduction of a pickleball, well, not just a world rankings, a world series, and you've got this whole tour, and you're almost wanting to kind of, I wouldn't say mirror, but you're looking to take on the ATP and a lot of those other traditional tennis sports with the all-encompassing ranking and world tour.
Absolutely. I think it's very inspired from there. To say the least. But the idea here is that we're at a stage, and it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity for a sport, right? Because the sport is so nascent, and what we thought is that it needs that kind of push internationally. So what we decided is, instead of going at it one piece at a time, we said, well, let's look at the whole ecosystem, how we can benefit the players, how we can introduce the sport in the fastest way across the globe. So what we realize is that just doing marquee events is not enough. You need to have the pathway, you need to have the feeder tours, and then that's not enough. You need to have the recreational side of it. So basically we said, well, let's access the funnel from the top, but let's access the whole funnel.
This is a very interesting point that you made over here, that you need to actually access the whole funnel, which primarily means that you're putting ticks across everything that comes in the levels, and thus also comes in the entry point, the grassroots level, the age group level. The pros will be playing, people like you and I will play socially, but the kids who look at this sport as an exciting new sport with an easier entry barrier, how does that start in them?
Yeah, so I think this is the key point, right? So if you're a 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid and you don't have the marquee events, then you don't pick up the sport, right?
True.
You don't pick up the paddle. But then let's say you have the marquee events and you don't have infrastructure at the grassroots, you know, there's no way for you to get there. Now, what was happening in pickleball is that in the US you had that career pathways available, but you just didn't know how, like an Indian kid or kid in the UAE, how do they get there, right? So what we decided is that, you know, it needs to be more global, more inclusive, and have that pathway available for everybody across the globe. So that's why, I mean, that's where that dream comes true, right? Like that whole, like the next 10 years. And I mean, for us, it's the next decade of pickleball. I mean, we're looking at 2036 Olympics happening in India. You know, we want the sport to be available there, and the first Olympic champion to come from India.
You made a great point just when we were talking off air that I wasn't too familiar with paddle or pickleball or anything coming from Australia, where, I mean, growing up, I had 6 or 7 tennis courts within a couple of 100 metres, and I had friends who had tennis courts, so there was no need for this. And I come to the GCC, and there's not really tennis courts. There's a lot of pickleball courts. Is it space being such a limitation? Is that one of the reasons it's so popular in the GCC?
I think you know, if you look at Dubai and Abu Dhabi and, you know, overall GCC, space has never been a limitation. I think we've always made space. If it's needed, you'll get it. I think so. I think it's the whole aspect of that learning curve. I think if you're playing tennis, you're playing with a coach for a year, right? You start off, it's not a social sport. So you're basically, even before you get on the court with a friend of yours, you're taking a year to perfect at least get on, to be able to good enough
more
to
than
get
that.
on it. And then sometimes that takes a lifetime, right? So I think one of the key things with this is that you and I could go to the pickleball court tomorrow and then start playing, right? And none would be the wiser, basically.
But then, Pranav, tell me this. You know, you mentioned about the social aspect of it that you and I can go to. But for someone like, say, Pranav, our producer, or me, if the pathway is pointing towards the Olympics 2036, and I think that's a fantastic vision to have right now, 8 years from now. And 8 years is a pretty long time for anyone to actually get into any sport and create that pathway towards the final end goal. Within the UAE, within the GCC, are there opportunities for people to actually take up the sport in that professional way, and is there a ranking system?
Yeah, so this is where we come in, right? So what we're saying is we'll come in full-fledged, we'll create this ranking system, we'll create the events, but not just the marquee events, right? So the World Series is a marquee event, but then we'll create the UAE Tour, the GCC Tour, where you could have the 7 Emirates playing against each other, but then also have facilities within, let's say, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which are all, again, part of this whole ecosystem. So tomorrow, let's say you go to a club, if you want to see that pathway, it's available at your local club, as opposed to you know, you trying to find, how do I go play this event. So now you know, anytime you want to play a pickleball tournament, you just look up Pickleball World Rankings, and if there's an event happening nearby, so that becomes your pathway, basically. So
that's the opportunity. If you're a local player and you want to get involved, you just got to look it up, and there's pathways, there's opportunities for you.
Absolutely.
10 years' time, your vision, clearly you've got one. Where do you want to see pickleball and pickleball in the UAE?
So in the UAE, I think UAE doesn't talk in 10 years, right? So we're talking 6 months, 12 months. You know?
Okay, fair enough, yes.
I think 10-year vision is for the overall sport. But like if I talk about GCC, I think 3 years is what we're looking at becoming the biggest racket sports in this region. And I think that vision is very much achievable, because just the way the sport is phenomenal. Once you play it, you get addicted. It has that effect. And I've seen that multiple times, and that's one of the reasons why it's picked up so heavily in the US, and not just in the US, but if you talk about the Asian countries, it's growing like anything in China. It's growing phenomenally well in India. 1 year ago, nobody knew pickleball in India, but you talk to anybody in India right now, everybody knows about pickleball, at least in the urban cities.
Are you looking to take people that may have been playing tennis, or is it in a lot of sort of East Asian countries, people that have traditionally been perhaps badminton or table tennis players? Are you bringing them across to play outdoors with pickleball?
Yeah, I mean, so initially the transition is very easy for any racket sport player, right? So for example, if you've played tennis, it's easy to drive from the back. But if you've played table tennis, you have great hand-eye coordination, the way pickleball is played once you get to the net, because you can't really go in volley, there's a non-volley zone. Once you get to the net, your hand-eye coordination really helps you. So I think a combination, your badminton movements helps you move up and down the court and side by side. But so I think it's a combination of all these sports. But I think eventually we want first generation pickleball players, and that's the aim, and that's why we're talking to the Dubai Sports Council, we're talking to the school associations. We want to bring it at the grassroots level because we want to have the first generation pickleball players from a long-term perspective.
I quite like this point. First generation pickleball players could also mean that they don't carry the baggage of other sports onto this one and say, oh yeah, this is like tennis. They want to be trained in the sport as from the nascent stage. But tell me this, we mentioned about all of these aspects, but is the biggest challenge still, or rather would come in from paddle?
Look, I mean, I have had numerous opportunities to play paddle, but for me, with my kind of weight, it's intimidating. Right. I think pickleball doesn't have that challenge, and that's where I feel. I mean, look at the women participation in pickleball, right? It's almost 40%, which is phenomenal for any sport. So it's because once you're on the court, there is no intimidation. Like as a women participant, you can play against a man, and which again is for a sport that's a huge upside, right? So it's very inclusive from that perspective. So I think pickleball has that advantage. Also, I mean, if you look at the number of courts, for example, in the US. There are about 1,000 paddle courts right now, but there are 250,000 pickleball courts.
Wow.
So similarly, if you look at paddle courts across the globe, like Sweden has 4,200 courts. The cost of a paddle court is much higher with the wall behind it. So cost of infrastructure is cheaper with pickleball. The barrier to entry is much lower, and then it's I feel a much more enjoyable sport and less intimidating from that perspective.
And that's a really important part of it is because you mentioned your passion for it is your ability to be able to get out and play and engage with family and friends.
Absolutely, and I think that's I feel that if I can play it, there's a huge population of people who want to play sports are either not able to play it or not able to play at a particular level. With pickleball, you can actually live out your fantasies of being competitive on a sporting field.
Yeah.
So.
Well, congratulations on all of your work. I mean, you're an inspiration to be able to drive this agenda and get people out and get people active.
Yeah, thank you.
So if you want to know more about it, Pickleball, it's launching soon, well, the World Rankings and the World Series and also that World Tour. But if you do see a pickle call around, what's a racket going to set you back? 200-300 dirhams to get one for yourself? Starting point?
I mean, it starts off at probably that around. I mean,
Neil's going to spend 2,000, but let's not worry about it.
I was in fact coming to that because your history, the family history comes in the manufacturing of table tennis rackets. Are you also then extending it to pickleball rackets?
Yeah, I mean, so look, I'll give you a very interesting talking point there. Like Asia has a huge affinity with racket sports, right?
Yeah.
So badminton is the most played sport in Asia with 222 million players. Table tennis is the next most played racket sport, but tennis is not up there. One of the reasons for that is accessibility of product. I mean, of course, infrastructure, but also tennis rackets are composites, which are expensive, right? Badminton racket you can get anywhere in China or India at $1 available in retail. What our aspiration is to bring pickleball price points, paddle price points to that particular $1, $2 kind of retail, and I think that's where we'll see huge amount of participation. I mean, the fact that it's easy is just one step of the whole thing, but then when you own that whole supply chain to get the paddle price point to that level, that's where we'll see mass participation.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Well done on your success. We look forward to seeing how it's going, not in 10 years, but 6 months.
Yes.
And the CEO and the co-founder of the Pickleball World Rankings, Pranav Kohli, thank you for coming in and congratulations on your success.
Thank you for having me.
If you're a big fan of pickleball, you've experienced it, or maybe you want to have your say, 0586861003. Messages just come in saying, hi Kitchen Neil, I love pickleball. I always assumed it to be a corporate sport like squash until I came to the UAE and I was able to enjoy it. So it's a great example of that